等陣啊，我問咗你可唔可以 start video？
呢個唔使 start video，
我唔使，
呢個唔使 start。
咁即係要
我要呢個 present 做 present， 呢個就係 present， 呢個唔使 start。
要 check 下你可唔可以 share screen， 不過應該 OK 嗰個。
佢話 disable 咗 share screen。
我要喺邊度？喺度啊。
and
人。
73149464
係啊，應該 update 咗啦。
Okay, good. 我哋陣間會係咯，你參加咧？唔係，我係幫手搞個 S 係一隻好嘅。哦，你而家睇到啦，佢話3點。OK，
71670。
我頭先咧 send 咗兩個slides 啊。哦，應該你同 Clayton 講。你好。Hello Romeo， 你好。我哋有 send 咗個 email 嘅，佢群裡面咧有兩個嘅 slides， 可唔可以睇下係冇問題嘅
？OK。
呢個 slide。
係。佢改過一次㗎啦，係 keep 住。OK， 好，應該冇問題嘅。可唔可以幫我睇下第一個 panel 啊？改咗個人嘅啦，係咪加咗一個叫咩 Jonathan 啊？睇下第一個 panel。有。
係。 好似
唔係你個咪要唔要？有啦，應該有聲。喂，係啊，OK。掂晒。Nice. Yeah, good. 呢個就好勁嘅，即係擺到呢度已經收到啦，全場都。
Afternoon, everybody. Hi. Afternoon. We're just expecting a few more of you here in the room, and so we'll just be a few more minutes. So for those of you online, we are conscious that we're due to start now. We will just be a few more minutes whilst we let everybody arrive to take their seats. So bear with us. Back to you very shortly. Thank you.
I think we.
Hello again, everybody. You're all very, very welcome. It's great to see you all here, those of you in the room and those of you who are online. So it's a pleasure to welcome you all here on this Friday afternoon. I'm conscious that we stand between you and your weekend. But this is a very important, the conversation we're about to have is a very important one, and so well worth spending the time with us. My name is Richard Mazzocchi. I'm in the banking finance team, the regulatory team here at KWM. And in giving this introductory comments, I'm a very poor substitute for Minnie Sue, who unfortunately is unwell this afternoon, couldn't make it. She sends her apologies. Today's gathering is particularly timely, considering the very recent successful launch of the first batch of spot virtual asset ETFs in Hong Kong. And congratulations to those of you in the room who had a very critical role to play in that. This achievement represents a major milestone in the development of virtual assets and their integration into mainstream financial products. Let's just take a moment to reflect on Hong Kong's remarkable journey in tokenisation just over the last 2 years. The rate of change is quite incredible. In 2023, we were delighted to have been involved in the launch of the first tokenisation of green bond by the Hong Kong government. And again, those of some of you that worked on that are in this room as well. A new virtual asset trading platform regime was announced. Pilot programs on CBDCs were initiated, including e-Hong Kong dollars and cross-border e-CNY, and privately placed tokenised structured notes were introduced. We've seen a series of SFC, HKMA circulars and guidelines, many of them on a regular basis, on the tokenisation of securities and other investment products in the last quarter of last year. More recently, there has been introduction of tokenised funds and the trading of first tokenised warrants. We anticipate new regulatory frameworks for stable coins and spot virtual asset dealing, which are currently under consultation. So there's a lot to talk about, and we have a variety of speakers this afternoon, all of whom are very expert and have had a lot of experience in each of these issues that I've mentioned. We're honoured to have collaborated with various market participants in these groundbreaking developments. And we look forward to continuing to work alongside our clients to help unlock the immense potential of asset tokenization. Today's forum, as I said, will examine all of these developments as well as the opportunities for all of us. And once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for joining us today, both in person and online. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for the opening remarks. Next, I would like to invite Angelina Kwan, Managing Director at Stratford Finance and Advisor at Emergenex, to give us a few words. Angela.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Cast your mind back to 2019. Imagine a room about half the size, and there were people in the room who were even so scared to even be meeting together. Those people, including Gary and myself, met in the FSDC's offices, and everybody was so afraid to even be seen together. And when we wanted to take a picture, they didn't even want to take a picture. The houses that were there at the time were BitMEX, OSL, Hashkey, OKX, FTX even was there at the time. And everybody had a fear. Everybody had, oh my God, what's going to happen? All the houses are leaving. Crypto.com had already left. And we convinced Rocky and King that crypto was worth something and worth saving. And on that day, we took a picture together. I'm still trying to find that picture. But even then, some of the people were like this, and they were so scared. Last week was a watershed. The government pulled every single thing that I could see out of a hat to actually list the crypto and spot ETF. Eleni, your bank was the first bank to allow for, and when I talk to you guys about this, my hair is standing up because I remember those days. And we were all so scared because we were afraid the SFC would come in and just go, stop, you're all doing illegal things. But now, the government, the SFC, all worked together to launch the first ETF. And it's a very, very different day from that fateful day in 2019 when Han Jie, who was the women's commissioner, said to me, Angelina, you've gone into this very evil business of Bitcoin. Do you know what you're doing? To now, she actually came up to me and she said, you know, Angelina, I'm so sorry. I made a judgment on you. And I'm really happy that you've helped the government and you've worked with the government, and the government now is really releasing. So I just thought I would give you a very dramatic change, and just to set the scheme of how exciting times are and how amazing we as people who live in Hong Kong have now. Because what does this mean with this ETF? It means that if we play our cards right, and that little thing called Stock Connect gets the switch goes for these 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 spot crypto ETFs, that means Mother China will tacitly eventually allow possibly the trading, even though it's through a security, through the spot ETF, maybe one day that they will be allowed to trade this, which means the fruition of everything that that little tiny group that was so scared that met together wanted. So I was asked by Esme to sort of kick this off, and just to put this all in perspective, that all of you who stayed in Hong Kong, who didn't move to Singapore, are a part of these pioneers, and please be a part of these pioneers. Believe in Hong Kong. We can do it. Don't go, don't leave, help Hong Kong, make it successful. We have a lot of things ahead of us. Thailand is really putting their best foot forward, and guess what? They're low cost. We're not exactly cheap, but you know what? We have heart, we have money, and we have spirit. And this is something that's really, really important to bring back Hong Kong as a fintech center, as well as the king of financial services. And I have great great hopes that Bonnie and her entire team at HKEX will eventually more embrace digital assets as well as put out more financial services products. But all of you here are experts in what you do, so please play a part in that. The last thing I'm going to leave for you is in October of this year, the Hong Kong government has agreed to something that is unprecedented. We're going to have something called Blocktober. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to attract every possible developer to come to Hong Kong. And for clarity, what does that mean? If we can convince a guy that I pay $2 million US for, who's a top developer, and he or she comes and lives here. They rent a house, they buy a car, they eat in our restaurants. The wealth effect just comes and comes. And this is what we're hoping that we can attract developers, new companies, and new licensees to Hong Kong to make Hong Kong the king of the capital of financial services again. So October, we've got SmartCon, we've got Consensus, and we've got FinTech Week, 3 biggies, plus we hope to have 1 million events for developers as well as new companies setting up here. So we're really, really hoping for all of yours, the legal profession, the crypto profession, digital assets Web3 professions to all work together to welcome these people and to bring Hong Kong back to being the king. So on that note, we have a lot of interesting speakers today. So without further ado, we introduce our next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. Next, may I invite Dr. Yu, founder of UWeb, to give us a few words. Thank you.
So, it's clicker work. I'll give you a very short conversation about to illustrate the thesis of this conference. Why we are going to talk about packaging the RV tokenization and just about crypto ETF, just because there any my slides, okay. The thesis of this bull market of this first one is securitized tokens, and the second one is tokenized securities. Just like we were talking about this bulk crypto ETF, we wrap the tokens just like Bitcoin and Ethereum into the securities. Just like as we know, all the ETF are securities, and so the traditional investment institutions could flow in these pairs. And another important part is to make the securities convert to the tokens. That means the RWA tokenization. So we can my slides is fine, right? And based on these underlying concepts, we can see there will be 8 core trends of important trends for this bull market. The first one is bulk ETF, another is the RWA tokenization, and then will be DePIN, the decentralized physical infrastructure, and another one will be DAI, the decentralized AI. And there will be some important innovation, just like the modular blockchains, which means we can convert the apps to the app chain. That will be very important trends. And we can see there will be some layer 2, not only based on the Ethereum, but also based on other blockchains. And there will be something just like the let me remember how do I say okay, there will be the Bitcoin ecosystem, just like I just come from the Bitcoin Asia conference. We can see a lot of Bitcoin layer 2s and the ruins protocols, and that'll be really great chance. Just because recent days we can see some token price decrease a lot, and that means maybe that will be very good time to allocate some assets, some new assets. So please give me 1 more minute to introduce about UWeb. The UWeb is University Web3. It's a crypto school we focus on the crypto education for almost 6 years. Formerly, I'm the founder, I'm the president of Huobi University, affiliated Huobi Group. And we have trained a lot of very famous project founders and miners and investors in this field. And we have trained a lot of people to from the traditional financial sector to the Web3 fields. And from last year, we moved. Because as you know, the Huobi Group, the shareholder of Huobi Group changed, so we found another institution called the UWeb, University of Web3. We are located in the suburb of Hong Kong, and we trained a lot of people around the world, and we have another DeepIn labs. We are like to incubate some DeepIn projects for just like a lot of people want to just like some traditional companies. They want to convert their traditional cars, phones to do some DeepIn models. So it's really good time to collaborate with the emerging X Labs and King Wu's Melances, and we really hope you have a great time, and we can maybe I have bring some of my books. If you want to have a book afterward, I can give you and send for you. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you all for the opening remarks. So let's kickstart on our exciting panel discussions. Our first panel will be on tokenization, moderated by Mr. Romeo Wang from UWeb. May I please invite all panelists on stage? Thank you.
You can see moderator.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me here to moderate the first session. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Romeo Wan. I'm the colleague with Dr. Yu. So we are all funding the UWeb. So unfortunately, his slides doesn't show it out. So we are doing a Web3 investment related education. So we are registered in Hong Kong. My background was I spent like more than nearly 20 years in business and finance and media. So if most of you know the finance in China, we have a quite famous name called Caixin Media. I was one of the founder. I ran the business for like 7 years. Before that, I was working for the Wall Street Journal. I worked for Economist quite a long time, international media. Then later, I moved to a UK-based called Euromoney Institutional Investor. I was the China CEO for 5 years before I full-time moving to the crypto. So at that time, I would say, many people say, yeah, just like Angelina Kwan met, right? Somebody just question you why you're doing these things. It seems you have a decent job, now you looks like jobless. So doing some, because most of Web3 people are remote work. Now we are remote work. So I spent quite a long time. But later on, I joined like one of the listed company in Hong Kong called, that time called Huobi Tech. I was a CMO. So because mainland seems to be illegally, you still want to work in that space. So I kind of moved into Hong Kong, and now most of the Huobi staff now we run this the UWeb. We want to bring more people onboarding into the Web3 world. That's what we're doing. So that is my background. So I'm very happy, excited to have the time to talk with all these speakers. So let me just give each of you just a few minutes to introduce yourself, so everybody can know you. Maybe I can start with Andrew.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Thanks for. I'm from KWM, so thank you very much everyone for making the time, especially on a Friday afternoon. I think we're all very surprised at the attendance, given that it's 4 p.m. on a Friday. So thanks very much for making the time. My name is Andrew Fei. I'm a partner in our banking and finance team. I work on a pretty broad range of things. So transactional side, loans, derivatives, structured finance, and then on the regulatory side, a lot of traditional financial regulation. And then nowadays, I think as more and more, regulated financial institutions enter into the digital asset space, my practice has evolved, and then, looking at a lot of different aspects of digital assets, including tokenization, which we'll talk about, but also, stable coins, custody arrangements, and also, regulatory capital treatment for banks in terms of their investments in crypto assets. Yeah, so look forward to the discussion today.
Okay, let's introduce Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary Chu. Sitting between sort of the heartland of law, well, sort of lawyers among lawyers, and heartland of crypto. I'm neither. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I'm executive director for OSL Group. I've been with the firm for about 5 years. We started the journey in Hong Kong, getting the first license issued by the SFC for virtual asset trading platforms. We've been operating, coming up to our fourth year as an operating platform already. So I think today will be a good one to talk about some of the products that we've seen in the last few years, and probably the products that we hope to see in the not too distant future.
Okay, kind of borrows. Thank you. Now I'm moving to Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Gill from Hashkey. So I'm a senior tokenization director in our tokenization team. So like OSL, we hold type 1 and 7 licenses for digital assets. And we're also licensed in Singapore, Japan, and most recently in Bermuda. So I think today is going to be quite an interesting discussion about where we've come from and where we're going.
Good, thank you. Okay, Luke.
Hi, everyone.
Specifically to tokenization, I started my journey about 6 years ago, firstly as an advisor to a tokenization shop that was focusing on real estate tokenization, based in Hong Kong, actually. I moved on then to do some research with the World Economic Forum on topic related to tokenization. That was my first pit stop. The second one was with the asset manager Fidelity International as global head of digital asset. There I led the onboarding of the first tokenized bond that was issued by the Hong Kong government, the green bond, and then arranged the tokenization in collaboration with Switzerland-based Signum Bank of one of our funds to make it available to a layer 2 protocol, ZK Sync. The third stopper, so currently I'm an advisor or board member to a few startups in the tokenization space, also consult with traditional asset manager who want to move some of these assets in the token space. And I'll soon announce a new role with the shop, which I think is going to also promote the growth of tokenization. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. So everyone knows that we are quite good team here. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So let's just start. I just find it very interesting the pace to hear. So it's a very good infrastructure, right? Infographic. So, but let's just start. Why we bother you to take a few minutes to look at it? We just here. So use your ears. So I maybe start with Andrew. So just like Richard said, lots happening in last 2 years. So just can give us a heads up about what's the kind of overall a regulatory landscape in Hong Kong now for all the crypto or tokenization. Just to give us some detail about the recent.
Yeah, sure. Very, very happy to do that. So as many of you know, the Hong Kong government, different parts of the Hong Kong government has been very, very active in the digital asset space, putting out proposals, regulations, guidances on a lot of different areas, right? Just to list, just some random ones off the top of my head, there's obviously a lot of guidance on ETFs, on custody arrangements, regulatory capital, exchange trading, over-the-counter trading of crypto, a whole host of things. But today's focus is really on tokenization. So I'm really going to focus on that topic for the purposes of today. I think it's really helpful so that we're all on the same page. I think all of you are experts already, but maybe so that we're all on the same page, we can start by briefly describing what we really mean by tokenization. So tokenization means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but I think at the highest level of generality, sort of a very high level description of what it really is just a process for issuing tokens using distributed ledger technology, where those tokens themselves represent ownership interests or ownership records in traditional assets. And these traditional assets could be shares, they could be bonds, they could be loans, they could be fund interests, or they could be real world assets like real estate or artwork. So the possibilities are endless. It's really important to know about the legal and regulatory landscape, because I think the general trend around the world, including in Hong Kong, is that crypto, whatever form it takes, is gradually entering into the regulated sphere. And it also means that a lot more regulated financial institutions, banks, broker-dealers, exchanges are entering into this space. So regulation and law and compliance becomes really, really important. So the good thing here, again, is that the Hong Kong government, especially the HKMA and the SFC, have over the past few years and over the past few months in particular, has given a lot of clarity and guidance to market participants on the legal and regulatory treatment of tokenization in Hong Kong. And that's really important, because if you want to innovate, if you want to do things in a compliant way, you need legal and regulatory certainty so you know what you can do and what you cannot do. So the SFC and the HKMA are uniform in their view about tokenization. It's quite a simple and elegant view of tokenization, which is that a tokenized asset, generally speaking, a tokenized asset is simply a traditional asset with a tokenization wrapper around it. So you get a traditional asset, whatever it is, you put a tokenization wrapper around it, and it becomes a tokenized asset. And that theory, or that view of tokenization, is very helpful, because it means that a lot of the existing laws and regulations that would normally apply to an asset would also apply to the tokenized version of that asset. So let's put that in context. What the SFC and HKMA have said, for example, is that a tokenized security is also a type of security, which means that the existing laws and regulations around securities offerings and other things in Hong Kong, those same securities laws and regulations also apply to a tokenized version of that security. And that's very important, because there's a lot of case law, there's a lot of guidance, there's a lot of compliance infrastructure in the market for Hong Kong as a leading financial institution about securities, right? We all know how to offer securities, we know how to do it in a compliant way. So it provides the market with a lot of comfort that these new types of things, you follow the existing regulations. And that's quite important. And it's also consistent with the trend we're seeing globally, which is this idea of same activity, same risk, same regulation. So applying existing rules and regulations to these new things based on their economic function and risk profile. But having said that, the regulators also recognize that even though tokenization most of the time is just a wrapper, it does introduce additional risks, especially for regulated financial institutions and for their customers. So it's very important for all the regulated financial institutions, whether you're a bank or you're a licensed corporation, to be able to identify, disclose to your customers, and also manage the additional risks brought about by tokenization. So according to the regulators, again, this is consistent with the views held by other regulators around the world, what are the new risks posed by tokenization? So those risks include legal, regulatory, compliance, technology, cybersecurity, custody, and also business continuity. So a lot of these things have to be properly managed and addressed in terms of regulated financial institutions. And the other thing I think I want to note briefly is that sometimes you have tokenization arrangements whereby the tokenization goes beyond just being a wrapper. It could actually transform the legal or regulatory characterization of the tokens that are being issued. And that really comes up in the context of fractionalization of ownership. I think people generally know that that's one of the touted benefits of tokenization. If you have like an artwork, or if you have a piece of real estate, it's a fairly illiquid asset, right? But if you can issue 100 tokens, each representing a 1% ownership interest in that real world asset, then each token is a lot more liquid and a lot easier for you to sell to investors because the sort of barrier to entry is a lot lower. So that all sounds really good, but there are important legal and regulatory issues to consider, because every time you fractionalize ownership in a real world asset, there's a good chance that the tokens that come out of that process could be considered to be interest in a collective investment scheme. And those are regulated financial products in Hong Kong and in other jurisdictions as well. So just to give you another example, because everyone obviously very, very concerned about US securities laws and US securities regulation. So under the US securities law framework, they have a concept that's very similar to a collective investment scheme in Hong Kong, which is called an investment contract. And it's very likely that if you fractionalize ownership in a railroad asset and you have these tokens are very likely to be investment contracts under the US federal securities laws, which means that they would also be securities in the United States. And as many of you know, US laws have fairly broad scope of application. So the real lesson here, I think, is that tokenization has a lot of benefits, but as more and more financial regulation is sort of entering into this space, and as more regulated banks and financial institutions do things in the crypto space, legal and compliance becomes something that is very much very, very important and a top priority.
Thank you. I think it's we all in this room, everybody just agree that regulation here is very important to boost such a mature market. But when we hear from the lawyers, that's just be nature. Every lawyer say, this is definitely one thing have to follow. But why are we just looking to someone in the market, not lawyer, but maybe you was a lawyer, I don't know. I don't know if he definitely, he was, he is a lawyer, definitely. But when everybody knows just Hashkey spend lots of money obtain a license, right? So now it's your time to justify so much money this was to obtain. Why it's so important to be a regulated, licensed one in such a market like Hong Kong?
Well, as I said, we're actually licensed in. We have various licenses in Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, and Bermuda. So I mean, our approach really has been, to get licensed in every jurisdiction we go into, which is not necessarily the approach of every market player. And I think, if anything, the crypto winter has really demonstrated there's been a real flight to quality, and increasingly clients are asking, if not, why not? It's no longer a case of trying to get by as long as you can without being licensed. And I think we don't see regulation so much as a hurdle. We see it as a competitive advantage. Not just for ourselves, but also for issuers and for jurisdictions themselves. And because we're regulated in 4 jurisdictions, we really do look at, obviously, as Andrew said, there's same business, same risk, same rules, and you see that for an established jurisdiction like Hong Kong, where people come to Hong Kong because they are confident in the legal system and they understand it, and there's case law and precedent and all that sort of good stuff. And I think there's going to be sort of a bifurcation, because you're going to see regulators in those jurisdictions say, our strength is, our track record. But equally, you will see another group of people, you're seeing it, for example, in Dubai with FARA, saying, well, here's our chance to have a bespoke regime for crypto. We're going to set up something that is set up for crypto itself, and we're going to treat it as a separate asset class. And we're going to have regulations that are not necessarily shoehorning into what we have. We're going to set things up to do things in a way that works for crypto. So, I mean, as we look around the world, we're going to see, 2 sort of divergent regimes, and we'll see how that works for each case.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So the guy, the other side is also the same background, right? So I don't need to ask you.
Same law firm, in fact.
So I just saying that's why we are in a law firm to discuss about it. But I'm not gonna ask you the same question, because the answer probably very much similar. Let's talk about the business, right? So you guys get the license, you have building up your competitive advantage, right? But how you can perceive when you have such a advantage, how you capture the business? How good is the business for the token? What's the view? What is your perspective for the tokenization market? And how you can, what's your strategy? What is step into to monetize the opportunity?
Sure. So I guess if we're talking about issuing products onto the street, we have to talk about more than just regulation. So I think let's try to put some order to it. So on the one hand, there's regulatory maturity or readiness within the market, and then there's operational readiness, and then there's market readiness. So let's try to cover it a little bit. So in terms of regulatory readiness and maturity,
if we were having this conference the way Angelina described it, it was 5 years ago, we'd probably sort of been a very dark room. But right now, we certainly, I think, in some of the markets that that we're familiar with, we have a much more, well, I guess a much higher degree of certainty. So regulatory maturity means the operators know what the operational requirements, well, compliance requirements are, regulatory requirements are. So as a business operator, you don't want to operate in a high degree of uncertainty. So similarly, if you're working with issuers don't like to spend a lot of money to issue stuff in a market where they don't know whether they're going to break the law, right? That's sort of bad. And regulatory certainty it's an extremely important aspect for the supply side. So operators, product issuers, and if you look at financial products, it's not just issuers who worry about this, it's all the intermediaries. So for example, in Hong Kong, if you're doing a bond issuance, you don't go directly from the issuer onto the investors. There are a lot of layers of intermediaries in the middle, all the brokers, all the private banks, all the retail banks, et cetera, et cetera. So regulatory certainty or readiness or maturity reflects that you actually have a very, very, I guess for all the operators who are involved in the production chain, they know what they're doing. They know they know the cost of doing business, right? So as a business operator, you want to have these. And then let's take it another level. Operational readiness. We're not talking about when we talk about tokenization, it's actually more than just saying this thing sits on a different database. There are actually operational requirements. When you actually record the instruments differently, all the people who are supporting the instrument. And I think today we have here at least one institution who know whose business is exactly about that. So BOCPT, as an institution that actually supports fund managers and product issuers, they're the ones responsible for keeping records. So the register of holders, transfer agency services, you change the database. It's not just a matter of loading another app on your phone. It's actually something a bit more than that. There's actually a great deal of once again that issue also touches on regulation, because for example, transfer agency services in Hong Kong are regulated under the AML ordinance. You can't just casually record stuff and call it a record of register of holders. So operational readiness means all the people involved in handling the instrument actually have the system set up so that you can run very, very high volumes, because you don't just issue one instrument onto the street and pretend your job is done. That's not a business. You want to do it day in, day out at very high volumes for many issuers facing many clients. That's what makes an issuance interesting, and that's what makes it profitable. So for example, as a trading platform, OSL, a lot of our staff are operational people, because trading platforms, we deal on volume. We don't deal on just one instrument. So I think the artwork example is really cool, because being able to tokenize a piece of artwork is very cool, like from a theoretical standpoint. And as a technologist, I think people, gets all people very, very excited. But it's probably not enough to run a business if we just do one artwork, right? That would make a pretty crap business, actually. So then let's move one more level. Market maturity. All right. So just because we can produce it, just because we've got the laws to support it and allow it to be done legally, are the buyers ready? I mean, are we selling them the right products? So we can tokenize stuff. I mean, like with the technical capabilities that we have in the market now, and all the lawyers like Andrew, right, who can advise and sort of earn some fees in the process. You can tokenize many exciting stuff, but are the buyers ready? Do they want this thing in a tokenized form, right? Let's say I tokenize Picasso, one of Picasso's really great works. How many Picasso fanatics are going to buy it, right? Are we delivering it to them, delivering this thing to them in the form that they want? And similarly, if we talk about tokenized securities, are we at the point where we say this is a very good financial product, not just because it's a token? Is this just good as a token, or is it good, period? And one good analysis or analogy is think of EVs, think of electric vehicles. So a number of years ago, we would say that's really good for an EV, right? Now we say that's actually a really good car. That's what makes that's to me that's a definition of market maturity and readiness. And I think today, and I look forward to hearing from the other guys, you know, whether we think at those three levels of operation, 3 levels of readiness, where we are. I think I would love to hear from other people on those fronts.
So you're ready. You are very much ready.
Oh yeah.
Okay. See, we can see that's very too powerful and licensed to one platform here. And look, just say you were part of the Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. That's very Web3. That's very Web3. Look, you were part of just like HSBC, and I just mentioned you work with in different region like Europe, and this is a two platform. Probably you can choose if you advise some of the asset or some projects to issue a tokenization fund or tokenization case. So you don't not necessary to choose between these two now. If you can, yeah, of course. But I want here, not just in Hong Kong. I think if Hong Kong to become just like Andrew said, coming back as a king, as a financial service hub, you need to compete with like UK or Switzerland. I don't know, maybe of US. So just give us like a comparison based on your experience, how good Hong Kong are compared with the other platform or regions. If you advising a client, say you want to issue a token, so what is the issuer's concern? What you would advise how to choose? Or maybe these two you can recommend.
Okay, you're putting me a little bit on the corner, right?
Yeah, I'm the one sitting between them now.
But so let me first rebound on the comment that Gary made, right? Because there are quite a few hot asset classes when it comes to tokenization. The first one, which is probably the less sexy, is fiat currencies in the form of stablecoin. Not really sexy, but we have 160 billion of those assets flying around. So I think it's fair to say that don't want to be too contentious, but that's the only really asset class where there is a product market fit.
Yeah.
Right. The rest of the asset altogether, I think if you are generous in counting, maybe you reach like 3 billion, and yeah, being generous. The other asset classes that have been of interest, bonds, for instance. The reason I'm talking these asset classes is because they're also related to actually where they're being issued. So I'm getting to your question. But bond, for instance, has been also very attractive. Why? Probably for kind of the wrong reason. There is, on one end, you can say there is a bit of creativity, laziness. It's like, oh, we don't know what to do. There is also a path of least resistance from the issuer, which is absolutely fair. I've been there. You know, if you need to convince whatever leadership board that you want to tokenize an asset, it's already complicated enough to explain what tokenization is. If on top of that, you need to explain why you're going to tokenize a specific Picasso, for instance, or a structured product, it makes it even more challenging. And then there are the other asset classes like real estate that are pretty hot. I think what makes more sense are actually credit products. So the reason why I'm talking about this is that it depends actually what type of assets you want to tokenize. It's not Hong Kong is going to be better, generally speaking, or the UK. Now, specifically to your question about these different jurisdiction. So, I mean, as we heard from the panelists, Hong Kong has put in place a well-structured regulatory framework. They're putting the bar pretty high, but we know where we're going. So this is a nice platform to welcome international investor. You mentioned the UK. UK is actually also pretty well advanced in the regulatory framework that they've put in place. And they move also pretty fast in terms of creating sandbox for companies to start showcasing what they can be doing. The problem with the UK is that, but now it's the UK. It's not an international capital market anymore. Europe. So I'm not European. I'm Swiss. So the funny things about Europe is like everybody has been talking about uniform market. It is what it's not, right? This is what they tell you when you live outside of Europe. But if you see how it works from inside, you're going to have like a big general rule, and then every country is going to come and say, yeah, but I want this specific rule, which is not going to create that big a market, at least not at the beginning. And then you have the US, which I mean, in terms of innovation, they're still leading the way in terms of the size and the skills that you can develop. They are up there. The problem is that there is a bit of gaps, say, in the regulatory framework. So going back to your question, I think it depends what type of assets you want to issue. A last point that I would mention was what Andrew say about regulation. There is this bifurcation between those who go toward the regulated environment and those who just decide to go not rogue, but they don't want to wait until a regulatory framework is put in place. The part that I find pretty frustrating is that on the side of startup or even like even established company who are trying to follow the rule and try to deliver a regulatory grade protocol or offering, they are left behind. They struggle to raise enough capital because most of this project, they don't want to issue a token. They actually want to showcase that they can fund themselves in a regular way. And then whenever they want to deploy the technology, they struggle to find a regulation where they can deploy this technology. I was mentioning the UK with the digital sandbox. It's a great environment, and the fact that, to come back to Hong Kong, there will be additional sandbox being put in place. That I think is a huge competitive advantage. But at the same time, so you go the regulatory path, and what you see your competitor doing, which are pretty much the same product as you see the market capitalization going into the billions. So bottom line is that I would hope this regulatory framework, a sandbox, to be put in place faster, because a sandbox is a sandbox where you can play around.
Thank you, Luke. I think Andrew will more agree because all the regulation usually was set behind what's happening, right? So just lawyers are so important to make it happen, right? So, but just like Luke mentioned about the bonds are very popular assets so far to be into the tokenization. But is there any other case you want to share with us? Some new asset class, probably you think it probably new trend you do want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So I do a lot of loans, so it's close to my heart. I think it's an area that, as you mentioned, there's a lot of tokenization about bonds, fund interest, shares, deposits, but relatively little discussion of loans. So the syndicated loan market is actually quite a large market for most commercial banks around the world. It's their bread and butter business, right? Syndication of loans. So I'll describe what it is, and then I'll try to tell you why tokenization could benefit this particular area. So a syndicated loan basically much is an arrangement whereby a group of banks together lend to a single borrower. Say I'm a borrower and I want to borrow $1 billion, and I go to one bank and say, can you give me $1 billion? The bank probably says, I've got credit limits. I don't want to lend you that much. So the borrower says, why don't I go to a group of 10 banks and each of them lend me $100 million, and they can do that. They do that a lot. It's a multi-trillion dollar market. Usually in that situation, you have a group of 10 banks. One of the banks acts as a facility agent, which basically manages and coordinates and administers that loan on behalf of all of the other banks. And then so this agent role, this facility agent role, it actually maintains a record, a register of who each lender is, how much they have lent, and also other information, KYC and all the other information. So right now, that register for a lot of the smaller agents, they keep it on paper. And then some of the more advanced ones, they keep it on an Excel spreadsheet. But it's fairly manual, archaic kind of process. And every time they need to get consents or they need to do stuff, they have to calculate it a lot. A lot of it is manual, a lot of manual labor, which means it's slow and it's prone to human error. But with tokenization, as we said earlier, you can take that traditional centralized database and you put it on a blockchain. I mean, putting on a blockchain in and of itself may not be a lot of benefits, but one thing to realize is that when it comes to tokens, when it comes to blockchain, you can also integrate smart contracts into it. And that's the really big draw, because once you harness the power of smart contracts, you can automate a lot of things that happen in a loan's life cycle, which would reduce a lot of the human error, the human manual processing. So from making the loan to calculating interest, paying principal, transfers of the loan, and often in a large syndicate, if something goes wrong, where the borrower needs to do something, it needs to solicit consent from the group of lenders. Through smart contract and tokens, all of that information can be, sent and centralized and processed in a very automated way. So I think that, really is an area where there could be a lot of innovation. It's also a large market. And then the other thing I think we're seeing eventually is that the banking system itself will be more tokenized, if you like. There'll be CBDCs, there'll be stable coins, as you mentioned earlier. So you may have a situation in the near future where loans are made, right? When a lender pays the borrower, they pay on chain through a stable coin or through a CBDC. So if the loan itself is already made on chain, it even makes more sense in that situation for the rest of the loan, for the rest of the administration and the processing of that loan to take place on the same blockchain. So that's sort of another reason why tokenization of loans, we're very positive about that, and we've already thought of the documentation and legal issues to make it work. So if anyone's interested.
Sorry, if I can jump on that one, because this is I was mentioning, I'm from the credits space, but I think the syndicated loan is an exciting opportunity for tokenization. One of the challenge there that I see is the lack of infrastructure. So you can issue a tokenized loan, but what is the rating of this loan? What is the yield curve of this loan? So I think those are the type of infrastructure that we are slowly seeing happening. That will make a huge difference in terms of adoption. So there is a product market fit, but there is also the feasibility. This is nice. You issue a bond, you issue a loan. Nobody really know what's the credit risk that you're taking. Nobody know how to price it, and that's a big issue.
I just follow what Luke said. I'm very interested to just hear Andrew said that syndicate loan now going to tokenization. I didn't heard of that before, because we had an event like a few weeks ago with Bloomberg. So that time we invite a DeFi protocol. They said they trying to tokenize private credit. So this is just like you say. I see many things could be tokenization, but maybe some issue like it, because every issuer wants to get more liquidity, right? But it's just like you say, is an investor ready for this? So look, I want to follow up with the conversation, say, is any kind of market favored asset class now on top of the bonds for this tokenization form? And it's just only issue like this, but everybody just want to show their muscle. Or is this mature already? Some of the products are ready to attract, are good enough to attract this investor. Or is there any trending in global regime? So
yeah, so to follow on the point that I made earlier, it's in terms of the hot asset, bond, fund are something that is pretty hot in terms of tokenization, but probably not for the right reason. Right? When it comes to bond, we talk about this, it's just an easy way to think, to do. When it comes to fund, it's look, there's two ways to look at it. You can say, we are finally going to make available as an asset manager or as a bank, our product to a wider group of investors, right? People maybe who cannot access, or maybe probably that we haven't been able to access. So that's at least there is an added value from the point of the issuer. There is also obviously an attempt to upgrade your infrastructure, right? There's a lot of still paper-based. There's still some facts. The infrastructure is pretty broken, if I can say. The challenge there is that it's not starting from the need of the investor. The investor, I mean, as Gary say, in most of the cases, why would I do that? Frankly speaking, if I have enough money to buy a Picasso, I'm not going to buy a fractionalized version of the Picasso. and look at it. I don't know, you cannot even look at it on your phone. I'm going to go and buy the Picasso, right? So from the point of view, say an average investor, not necessarily a Picasso buyer, what do you want? Diversification, right? You want to get access to asset classes that you haven't been able to access in the past. And that includes fancy asset classes like private equity, venture capital, which usually comes into larger bite size. I think this aspect of diversification is critical, especially now. If you have cash to deploy, what are you going to buy? Are you going to buy equity at the top? Are you going to buy a bond when you really don't know where rates are going? Or are you going to go into an asset class which, at least on paper, has fairly smooth return? The other thing that is you need to be realistic about is that there is a bit of a hunt for yield, for return. Right? The average investor is being shown all the time. It's like, hey, you know what? This Bitcoin performance be like 150% this year. And he's looking at his portfolio, say, dude, I'm making like 5% on my bonds. So there is also trying like, let's extend and reach out to different asset classes. There is ultimately this big gap between what the investor wants and what the issuer are offering. In terms of the asset classes, which I think are going to be the most interesting, is actually from the stable coin. It's more the asset classes that are, number one, not yet easily available, and number two, that people actually understand. So an example, trade finance, not easily available to investor who understand trade finance. My first job in banking 20 years ago was in trade finance. It's a nightmare, and it hasn't changed much. It's such a long series of paperwork to go through. So that's makes sense, but it's difficult to understand. There are other asset classes, and I think one of the prime example for me is the electronic invoices, right? It's popping up everywhere. Malaysia recently announced that they're going to make this mandatory. There is other country in Europe, including Italy and Brazil. And I mean, everybody understands what an invoice is. And this is, I think those are markets that are not yet accessible, but understandable. So I think those are areas that makes much more sense in terms of tokenization.
That's interesting. Just like I mentioned, say, just like there's a gap between the investors, say, when they move to high risk, they think it's a tokenization of crypto a high risk. They expect high return, but you give a very low, like 5%. There will be a gap in between. Just like say, one asset class is just a private credit. What they do, the protocol to, I'm not going to mention name because it's not regulated. It's just for the payment receivable. They only accept this within like a few days. I don't know what is the definition for few days, maybe within a week, for cross-border payment. For someone wants to money from Switzerland to Thailand. So they charge very high margin of interest because it's very short term. So people can really understand. And they just got the margin and give the return like maybe, I don't know what's the return, but it's pretty much high, but easy for the investor to understand how they control it. But I don't know what's the default rate, but that's one thing. So I just think this is a very interesting DeFi trying things. But when they're moving to a sandbox, probably they were going to another like a regulated way, maybe going to popular later on. I don't know. Maybe this is the way Web3 to change the Web2. But I think it's like Jonathan cases before. So what is the most interesting case in Web3? Just like I mentioned one. So is there any other interesting thing you want to share with us?
To pick just one, but picking up on what Luke was saying about things that are not easily accessible but understandable. Doctor, you mentioned something quite interesting about DePIN, and that's something that we're really looking at the moment. So for anybody who doesn't know, that's decentralized physical infrastructure networks. So in the past, if you think about any grids or water supplies or so on, that's generally built by a government or, and they would look to build something with very long lead times. Perhaps they charge a toll or something like that. And then by design, obviously, that's not necessarily built with the community's best interests in mind, because you're trying to make commercial return and so on. It's not by the community for the community. And what we're seeing a lot more of now is people using tokens to incentivize communities to scale up a network and develop it for that community's own use. So the idea of that is you would start up a network and you would provide users with a tokenized reward, which then they can either use or they can spend what has some kind of value either within or outside that network, which we find very interesting because you can really bootstrap the creation of infrastructure. So we've acted on or invested in quite a large range of deep-in projects, like EV vehicles, which is, or EV charging, fleets of vehicles similar to an Uber style thing, except there's no middleman. Spare capacity for people driving around for their dash cams, so they can map streets a bit like a Google Maps, except in real time, so you can see what's happening with traffic in real time. So it's quite an interesting process for us because you can see how things can scale up and rival existing networks of infrastructure that have been built quite a long time ago, but it can be done leveraging the power of multiple users in real time and for that community.
Let me echo what Jonathan said. Deeping is like decentralized physical infrastructure. What I know is like HashKey is very keen onto that as class. I heard from Dr. Shao mention sometime. That would be very interesting. What you have done is we work with like Water Drip Capital, Web3 Venture Capital. We have a lab called the Deeping Lab. So we are trying to find out the very early stage deeping projects plus with AI concept. And currently we just run a demo day. So we look through like 50 different projects. Very interesting. In the early days, many of the deeping projects are just use a wireless. So if you in US, you can buy a Solana phone. They call it Saga. The phone is about, I don't know how, maybe $600 or $500. So you don't get a phone. You can order online, but you get the phone next year because the supply chain in China it's taking a long time. But you have account in the phone. You have a digital wallet version. So they airdrop different tokens into your wallet. So before you receive the phone, you already get all the money you paid before. So it's like a money machine. But it's not the point. Many of the projects now use this deeping concept to, we said it's a cold start. Because in the past, Web2 need to finance them some money from the venture capitals. But now the venture capital doesn't have enough LP. So where's money? So now tokenization is token at least is also a way. But tokenization going to this physical asset is a very meaningful things. We can also consider this is RWA. This is a very good asset. Maybe this is also HashKey is looking at it. But I just this bringing to this concept to all you guys. This is happening now. We see many of the energy company are doing so. Very just like you say, the charging for EV. We about closing deal. I'm not going to mention the name for advertising for any of the projects. So use the charging. If you buy the charging, can multiple use Tesla, different type of the EV. They give you a token, but you need to share with all the other things. Very interesting. But I do encourage you to Google, and this is a new asset class in the future for tokenization. The last but not least, because we used to share one microphone, so I leave you on to the last. But Jonathan has done his speech, but I want just play a trick between you because I want to see many of the players going to compete in this market. And I heard from HashKey say they're very key into the tokenization and also deepening as a class. What you OSL have prepared for is a more competitive market now? We want to hear. You maybe send us some. Everybody just one socks by. Like, well, so that's very attractive for everyone.
One sock each. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The souvenir for
arrange.
everyone. Right. Okay.
Well, I mean, look, the ecosystem, not just in Hong Kong, but I guess just use Hong Kong as an example. Obviously, it's very, very fast changing. 6 months ago was the concept of launching a spot ETF. It was not on mine. I was quite surprised, and I think as were a lot of many other market participants. And if you look at sort of the market landscape, look, 4 years ago, we were the only one in the market, and that lasted for about 2 years. Was that going to last forever? No, absolutely not. No way. And if we sort of look forward as well, obviously, no one would expect and no one would want the market to be sort of this small market with a small number of operators. No way. That's not good for not good for anyone. So from our perspective, we look at the last 3-4 years as a very important learning experience because nobody gets everything right all the time. And actually, if there's one thing about the financial markets that we know is actually the financial markets based on a lot of people doing things that they're very good at, and then we work together. And actually, the ETF is actually a very good example because, I mean, if I sort of just do a slightly nerdy exercise, if you count the number of financial institutions, you need to work together in order to get one spot ETF working. Does anyone have that number? Because I do. Because no, it's close. It's about 9, and that's a minimum number, right? And if you count the number of parties involved, minimum number of parties involved to get it happening, it's more like 14. But just purely in terms of financial institutions, that actually gives you an idea of how much work needs to go in and how many people need to get things right, right? And the funny thing is, and JD is sitting in the audience who's going to be speaking to you soon. JD and I, we spend many hours together working with all the other participants within the ETF project on working on things that have got nothing to do with crypto. Had everything to do with banks. Because in any ecosystem, you work at the pace of the slowest participant. And this is not a criticism. It's actually what Luke said earlier on about the readiness of the ecosystem and the infrastructure. So an EV is also a very good example. You can be the most environmentally conscious person driving the most efficient EV, but picking off energy from a coal from a power grid that's powered by coal. Right, so we know that this is not even trivia anymore because this is well known, right? So Hong Kong's energy, about 70% comes from coal. Singapore, 95% comes from gas, right? So you can be driving the most efficient EV and being powered by gas. So in what we're doing in digital assets and crypto, a lot of actually what we're trying to solve is still exactly very similar types of problems. For example, banking problems. So you can be trading your ETFs many times a day, but behind the scenes is actually a series of banking processes that actually need to be resolved. And banking processes, for example, for remittance are still based on daily clearing between banks with cutoff times. So talking to crypto people, this is like, you know, this is like really ugly stuff. We can't accept the fact that we're actually designing a crypto product. We're actually working along the lines of Hong Kong business days with daily cutoff times and trying to make that work against, for example, US dollar clearing times. And by the way, that also excludes weekends or Typhoon 8 days or black rain, right? So this is the sort of friction points we are still working with as an ecosystem. So I think, you know, coming back to Romeo's question, so as an institution, we're learning to overcome a lot of these things over the last few years. And as we look forward, we actually do love to learn from our competitors as well, because that's how we actually make the whole ecosystem better. As much as they learn from us, we learn from them, we all learn from each other. So actually, we love to see the ecosystem get bigger, because and I repeat this, nobody gets everything right all the time. That's why we also learn from other people's mistakes, and we hope they learn from ours as well.
Thank you. I think Gary made a very good point. In crypto, we say that we need to build it together, and something like love and peace. Good. Okay, thank you. Our time's up. Let's just move into the next session. Okay, just give proud to all the speakers here. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Together and take a photo.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So thank you all for the very insightful discussion. Up next, let's move on to our second panel on the topic of spot crypto ETFs, moderated by Esme Powell from Emergent X. May I also invite our panelists on stage? Thank you.
Hi, testing. So thanks everyone for coming, and I understand that it's the second last session before drinks. So I'm gonna keep it really brief here, and at the same time making sure that all of our esteemed speakers have a chance to share their brimming insights. So without further ado, the topic today would be about what's next about Hong Kong sports ETF, and then we're not only going to focus on Hong Kong. At the same time, given that we have this international panel, especially with JD and also with Michael, so we're also going to zoom out a little bit and also do a global comparison and make sure that all of you have nuggets of wisdom to take home, right? So, right, sure. So let us go around the virtual screen right here, and then let's go on with the introductions. So let's start with Michael on the far left.
There we go. Cool. I'm loud enough for the people in the room, but not for the people watching online. Michael Elko. So I'm the head of market specialist in Hong Kong for Bloomberg. And you don't need to know what a market specialist is because we're the only ones that probably have them. So we help the product designers design what's going to be implemented into our different products. And then on the flip side, we also teach our sales force about what the go-to-market strategies are going to be for our firm. So I'm here because a lot of the stuff you see in the crypto space at Bloomberg, some of the token data support, research, et cetera, was driven of a collaboration between like my group and the product managers in New York and London.
Hello, my name is Eleni Wong. I'm from BOCI Prudential Trustee Limited. So as Gary have already introduced us, we are the custodian for the sports virtual ETFs, and we worked very closely with OSL and Hashkey to build up the custodian network for the sports virtual ETFs. So maybe I'll just.
Right, sure. And over to Flora of Harvest Global.
Okay. So hi, I'm Flora. I'm the head of digital asset at Harvest Global Investment and also the VA response officer at Harvest as well. And we work very closely with OSL and the BOS IPT. Yeah.
And Cindy of Kingwood Mallison's partner.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Cindy Sheck. I'm a partner at Kingwood Mallisons. I focus on funds and regulatory matters. So I have a particular focus in ETFs and more particularly all of the regulatory developments in the VA and fintech space in the last few years. So all things about licensing, product regulation, that's in my space. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jean-David Pequigno, JD. I'm head of markets at OSL. I'm also head of the OSL digital security entity, which is our SFC license entity here in Hong Kong. And so we've been obviously working very closely with a number of parties here on supporting the launch of the ETF a few weeks ago.
Right, that's great, fantastic. And just for everyone, my background would be in legal education at the same time. So I've defected and I went over to finance. So I will make sure that this time the panel that I create for all of you will have a very equal balance in terms of both legal regulations and also for investment and also opportunities. And the second thing about this panel is that I made sure that we have a very good gender diversity balance. Yeah, so okay, that's great. And I think with this, let's take it away. So I do want to get into the latest and also in terms of the future predictions. And let's start with JD. So JD, given with OSL, you're one of the first to launch the spot crypto ETFs. Hope to get your feedback as to what is the initial investor feedback, given that we're 1 week. It's a 1 week baby. And second, about future predictions.
Okay, so we didn't launch an ETF. Flora did. We supported the launch.
Yes.
So we're not really directly in touch with the investor. That's the role of the asset manager. But we definitely helped supporting both in cash and in kind creation. So, I mean, from our perspective, we got a lot of interest from globally, people reaching out. I'm sure that's the case for also the asset manager themselves, but wondering what the ecosystem was like in Hong Kong for those outside, all the way from the US, from Europe. A lot of people are reaching out and really keen to understand the differences also with what the US ETF was and how we supported that. Learn from our experience in this process, because there's a number of other markets in this region, but also globally who are looking at also launching their own ETF, right? So there's currently a lot of interest on Hong Kong market, and that's great because it's, you know, to Angelina's point earlier, it's also putting Hong Kong on the map where most people would like to see Hong Kong be in digital asset space. We've been a little bit falling behind Singapore at times, and I think we're just coming back stronger. So that's great. And so, yeah, we've seen, you know, a great emulation the first few days. I guess the inflow are a little bit calmer in these days. It's also a factor of the overall market that has been a little bit soft lately in the Bitcoin and Ethereum space. And so with that, generally the investors are a little bit more cautious in entering back into an instrument on asset class. So I think it's been generally a very, very positive experience for those all involved. And again, the amount of interest that not just the Hong Kong investor, but actually global investor are paying into this project is really I think what really drove everybody to be pushing for this project so quickly.
All right, fantastic. And then over to you, Flora. So given that you're front and center in terms of investor feedback and also the launches, so what would be your top 2 pieces of feedback that you'd like to share with all of us and you think will be the most meaningful?
Yeah, so I definitely have the saying this for sure. Yeah, so first one from the retail side, I just had lunch with Futu's people, and it is like a really important like source of retail, you know, the platform. So yeah, right now their feedback is like definitely the knowledge side. Like people need to understand cryptos. That's for one. Yeah, I think the whole narrative is going to be they have to learn about cryptos. That's the whole like that's the most important thing. It's not about like mechanism and the phase structures. Actually, that doesn't really matter. So they have to learn about crypto and know like right now it's a really good time to have Bitcoins. You know, that's more important for retailers. For institutional sides, there are 2 like source of institutional, like 2 type. And like first one is definitely the crypto native ones. And for example, like Amber, they're just literally onboarding OSL right now. Like I was literally, you know, texting them like their status with OSL. So for like crypto native, you know, prop shops or like market makers, liquid providers, they definitely focus on two things. First one is to refinancing. So they have their lot Bitcoin, so much Bitcoin in the reserve, and they wanted to like transfer that into the ETF shares, and then use ETF shares to do the refinancing, so they can have more like capital utilization. And the second one is definitely do the arbitrage. That's like needless to say, they want to do arbitrage both from like the traditional arbitrage point of view, but also with, since they are crypto native, they have so many like futures arbitrage and funding rate, the perpetual thing, that whole crypto structure, so they can combine that with the ETF arbitrage. So that's very important for them to onboarding with both our PDs and also the OSL, the exchange. So that's very that demand is increasing, and right now there's not much show in our actual inflows, because those crypto firms are actually onboarding like right now. So like they're still coming in, so we can see like much more inflows later on. And also for the quantitative like based prop shops, so they're not like crypto native ones, so they're gonna do the traditional way. So that's the thing, they need to understand the cryptos as well. So that's the same thing with the first one, like the crypto, like the educational thing. Yeah, so that's the for institutional investors. And the third one, the third category is for the public companies. So literally yesterday, after the panel with Gary, with our CEO, and my panel, there's like a UK investors, they're flying from the UK just for this panel for ETF. Then they like stopped me, asked me like one simple question: how do I buy this? So I connect them to the PD and the OSL people. So the thing is, they're public company. They have many Bitcoins, like in reserve, and they wanted to do the taxing and the whole like legal thing. So they need to actually change that to ETF shares. And also for like there's a company called WeMade. It's like a really big company in Korea. Their own token has like top traded volume, like top 3 trading volume in Korea. And the thing is, after there are some the regulatory change in Korea, their Bitcoin holdings gonna like not count for their their balance sheet. So they have the actual need to change that into ETF shares. Otherwise, they're done. But for US ones, this in cash, there's nothing. So they actually need to do the in-kind subscription. So I think that's the like biggest selling point for in Hong Kong, the in-kind subscription thing. So that's like the really like large needs. So so that's for the good things or the whole process. But there's any like bad feedbacks, still gonna be the whole ecosystem thing. Like we said, like a lot of PDs are coming. We're onboarding like traditional PDs like High Tone. Like Mirror is already done. We have so many like traditional PDs that are coming in, and they have to know the whole process. There are so many internal reviews, reporting to the back headquarters, in mainland China. There are so many things like what they call ecosystem to grow. But like we can definitely say the market, like literally just a baby. I think the big story is like just coming up.
Yeah, that's fantastic color. And as we all know, so it's all about building up the ecosystem, minimizing the friction. And now that we're talking about, improving the ecosystem and also minimizing friction, how to get the views of Cindy in terms of regulations. So how are you seeing, from a regulatory standpoint, what do you think would you want to see or your clients want to see in order for there to be enhanced adoption, especially when it comes to investment product structuring of the ETFs?
Well, I think in terms of, first of all, I think I should take a step back and just make a comment about how far we've gone in terms of regulation in Hong Kong. I've been in the Hong Kong market for 15, 16 years now, and one of the core principles of the SFC as a regulator is investor protection. And I think in the past, there have been periods of time, especially after the GFC, where the regulator probably took a more defensive approach to regulation. But definitely in the last few years, what we've seen is that the SFC have taken a very proactive approach, and not just the SFC, I would say, HKMA or the other regulators. They're now taking a very proactive approach to put Hong Kong back at the forefront as that king of the financial hub. I can see Angelina nodding to that. So I think
a lot of work has gone in the last few years by the regulators, by everyone in the market, to put together that regulatory framework that we now have. Jonathan, I think it was you that mentioned gaps in the US regulation in the crypto market. I think here in Hong Kong, we definitely do have quite a very balanced, it covers all the bases, which is why we've been able to create the spot crypto ETFs that we've now seen last week, where every single player in that ETF are locally based players. We haven't had to rely on any overseas PD, broker, whatever, anything. Everything is based in Hong Kong. So that's been a lot of effort. So yeah, I think, what was the question?
It's about what are the enhancements?
Enhancements. I mean, look, I think all the effort to get us here, and I think all the effort to get us here has been a great effort. Enhancements, I think no one expected that we could get a spot ETF in Hong Kong as quickly as we did. But I think now it's just the beginning. There's obviously a lot of development to happen. I think the regulatory framework that we have right now allows for that innovation and further development in the space. So it's not going to just be limited to Bitcoin or Ether. The framework that we have now does cater for more mixed strategies, other cryptocurrencies, whatnot. So yeah, I think what we have now is already a sound. It's enough for us to go a bit further. And I think what happens afterwards, I think, is a wait and see in terms of an assessment of any new risks that develop, any new market develops that develop. Yeah.
Right, that's brilliant. Hold on to that thought because we're gonna come back to the point about ecosystem. At the same time, Michael, so you're gonna be the guy, or for everyone's guy to fall back onto when it comes to global comparisons. So given that our other panelists touch on the points about Hong Kong, I'd like to step back and look at how Hong Kong spot ETFs compare with the other global counterparts, especially for the US. And I'd like to focus on the fee structures and also in terms of different specs.
Yeah, I think, well, naturally in Hong Kong, you have a higher fee structure than you would in other markets. So in the US, you'll have a much lower fee structure in terms of the ETFs. Just the fund market ecosystem here, that is one thing where Hong Kong is behind, and has always been behind. And that is the rebate system that you have in terms of selling funds. So you don't incentivize people to actually sell cheap ETFs. In the US, what you hear about with the ETFs is that the driver of AUM long term is going to be independent investment advisors. So the RIAs, they're called. You can literally go to the US and set up an RIA if you want. It's very easy, and it's a big trend in the market. And they're incentivized to sell you the cheapest product with the most return possible because they get paid by AUM. Versus in Hong Kong, the fund distribution system a lot of times is set up on a commission system. So you're incentivized to sell the most expensive fund possible as a distributor, right? So that's why the ETF market here has been a bit lagging in terms of market structure, and where we kind of need to catch up is maybe trying to think about how do we incentivize people to sell a less expensive product into the market. And then in terms of the holdings, though, what is kind of interesting is if the 13Fs just started to come out in the US. So for those that don't know, I think you told me there's a lot of crypto native people that signed up. So 13Fs are what hedge funds have to file in the US to disclose their long holdings. And it's not hedge funds in the US, it's hedge funds investing in the US so they have Cayman entity and they're investing in US stocks. Just look at IBIT, which is the BlackRock one. I think 6 of the top 11 shareholders are Hong Kong hedge funds. So think about that. 6 of the top 11 are Hong Kong hedge funds. Some of them are quite big and well known, like Ovada is a very, very large one. So I mean, for them, it's like peanuts in terms of their AUM. But some, even the top shareholder is a Hong Kong hedge fund. And people say, is there demand from Chinese money? The hedge funds that are holding it, most of them have a Chinese background. So it's not like China's not buying the Bitcoins. They're not like getting the money's already out. It's been out for a long time. They've been buying equities. But it's the Chinese asset managers are 5 of those 6 are actually Chinese asset managers. So it's quite interesting to see the demand coming in for the US ETFs coming out of the APAC region and seeing the top holders actually being US and coming from this region. So all that flow also was done on an unsolicited basis. So in the US, there's like a 90-day wait period before you can solicit flow into an ETF. So Hong Kong, Harvest can go sell theirs tomorrow.
Yes.
That's the big difference. But in the US, they have to wait. So you won't see, so at the moment, they're basically selling on brand name and unsolicited incoming flow is coming from people just sending in orders because they know it launched. So those are some of the differences and some of the interesting findings when you look at how the launch went in the US and where that demand is.
Right, that's great. So I imagine every one of you will be firing off emails to your teams to stake up the 13Fs. And right now, so just want to highlight that in terms of our panel today. So we basically see a microcosm of spot ETFs. So you have the client facing, you have the regulator, you have the lawyers, and then you also have, the exchanges. And here we have the, BOCPT, which is the custodian. So I do want to pick your brain in terms of the structure. And for this, because of the complexity, I do need to read off my notes, right? So for this, again, this ties also to the point that I've been getting the insights from Michael about the different geographies and also the jurisdictions. And this question is about the structural specifics of our ETFs. So for Hong Kong ETFs, they utilize a vertical structure where BOCPT acts as the custodian and appoints VATPs as sub-custodians. So this is different or opposite from the structure in the US, in which is horizontal, with two separate custodians being appointed. So why is this the case in Hong Kong? And also, what are the differences, the pros and cons?
Okay, so yeah, we are the odd one. So we are the custodians and trustees in the world. And just to add a note of that, we are also doing fund administration, valuation, transfer agency throughout the life cycle. So what we see would be more on the back end front on how it operates, and particularly, as you said, would be we basically have to think through stuff from the beginning of the structure. So in terms of the structure of the Hong Kong virtual asset ETFs, as you correctly alluded to, our role is what we call as a master custodian level, being the custodian for the open-ended fund company, which is the investment vehicle. So our role is to appoint a sub-custodian to hold virtual assets. But by the SFC rules, we have to appoint a VATP licensed sub-custodian in Hong Kong. And today we are very honored to have partnered with OSL and also with HashK on working out the 6 sports virtual ETF products. At the same time, in Hong Kong as well, is apart from the coins, bear in mind that all these ETF subscriptions are mainly either in cash or in kind. So for cash, under the Hong Kong rules, we will have to appoint an authorized institutional bank to help us to safekeep the ETF cash. So combining the two together, basically what we have in the Hong Kong virtual ETF structure is we at the top level, and we appoint a bank to hold the cash and appoint a licensed VATP provider to be the coin sub-custodian. Now, compared to the US side, where the US, they appoint a dual custodian role. So you have a cash custodian and also you have a coin custodian. But bearing in mind that in US, basically they are adopting a trust structure. So at the top layer of the dual custodian, there is a trustee. So if I transpire into versus US and Hong Kong, basically we are at the role as what we call the depository. So on the one hand, we can be a trustee if this is in the form of trust, but we are a custodian in the form of OFC. At the same time though, we have to make sure that for coins, it has to be appointed and has to be custodied by a licensed coin provider and safe kept in the ring-fenced AML and regulated environment. And for cash, it will be with the bank. So the beauty, I would say, is this is a unique feature for Hong Kong ETF is that by doing so, the virtual asset ETFs can be seen at the top layer will be very consistent with the traditional ETFs. So when we work with the managers, we work with all the providers, basically we have the benefit of benefiting from the existing regulatory framework. And it kind of echo with what the earlier panelist has mentioned about. It also echo with the regulators on same activity, same regulations. So we start off with the same basis and allow the investment managers to design a product that could extend it into the new investment class.
All right, perfect. So let's stay with the structure, and then let's talk about in-kind subscription and also redemption. So that is one of the key highlights of Hong Kong spot ETFs. And then with this panel, so I'm going to bring together the regulatory perspective and also with the market perspective. So let's stay with you and also for Cindy to comment on the regulatory aspect. So yeah, Elodie, just want to pick your brain in terms of how do you see the EOCPT exercising and also pragmatically conducting the in-kind subscription redemption?
Okay, so for the virtual ETFs, for Hong Kong, we are the first market to introduce in-kind, as you all know. So what we see is that both in-kind and in-cash subscription redemption that happened, for all these ETFs. In-kind subscription redemption, we see that since day one, it has subscription, it also has redemption. Does it work well? I would say from a provider perspective, it works because we can meet all the life cycle. And not to say is, I still recall the first day we met Gary and JD possibly, the first thing we asked is about the cutoff time and the efficiency on how that works on in-cash versus an in-kind. So these are the things that what we see is we have perfectly designed, well, I always say perfectly, but we have successfully designed the startup of having an in-cash with the right cutoff time and in-kind with the right cutoff time so that we could meet the life cycle of creating ETF units and also the cancellation. Yeah.
Right. And over to you, Cindy.
I think in terms of regulation, how does it play into us now having in-kind subscription redemptions? I think there's two angles. One is the fact that Hong Kong takes a securities regulatory approach to regulating the entire ecosystem. As Elaine mentioned, it means that we can adopt pretty much the traditional ETF model and sort of drawing from those experiences to create the crypto ETF. This differs from some other markets where regulation is a little bit more segmented, I would say, where they probably just focus more on the payments or the AML risks, thereby creating gaps. But here, because we have sort of a securities regulatory framework type sort of regime, we can pretty much borrow from the concepts of the traditional market. And I guess the other perspective is from a risk management perspective, because ultimately all of this innovation, all of these developments is very new and it carries with it a lot of risks, all types of risks. And so the fact that we do have all of these regulations in place means it really raises up the bar for everyone involved. Because we have to meet these standards, we have to meet these requirements, it does mean that it lifts up the game in terms of the level of sophistication of everyone in this room, everyone that's been involved, and thereby alleviating a lot of the risks, the AML risks, the cybersecurity risks, and all of those other risks. So it's not easy, but here we are.
Right, sure. So Flora, over to you. In terms of, I think one point that you mentioned that's very important would be about education, but let's put that aside and think about seeking alpha and also portfolio diversification. And how do you think investors could benefit from this in-kind redemption and also subscription? And how does that really feed into generating alpha as opposed to, the regulatory
Okay, so I'm not like a prep kind of person, so I'm just literally answer a question at this spot. So I'm BTS ESTP, just by the way. I'm pretty, improvised person. So yeah, so in so first one questions alpha. So like that's definitely in terms of arbitrage. So like I said, if you have the you because of the in-kind of subscription, you can actually do the proper arbitrage, not the US the in cash way. That's lame. So you need to do the in-kind way. You can do the proper thing. That's definitely the alpha. Yeah, there's literally just one like market making fund just launched by some LPs. Yeah, just focusing on doing the our Hong Kong ETFs arbitrage fund. That's literally a fund. So yeah, so that's definitely an alpha. And there's a second alpha because I have been doing a lot of road shows like for a lot of Chinese security firms like the big names, all the big names. And so they asked me about like do we have like a dividend yield on the ETF? So I was like any benefits, any alpha. I was like the biggest alpha is like you buy BTC right now. Like you have just buy it now. Like, why do you care about the dividends if you are already buying BTC? So like your what's it like your in knowledge, your foreseeing, your insights is your biggest alpha. That's what So that's pretty political, but that's true.
Right, and just very briefly, and also dig deeper. How about in terms of the on and off ramping? In terms of the incline
on off ramping. Okay, so basically, this since we're all friends here, so I'm gonna give my honest answer. So basically, if a customer asks me how do I buy it, I was literally like, PD, just go to PD. I just throw PD to them, like they can answer all the questions. And if there's market making, they need to deal with the OTC trading. They need to actually be our counterparty, and I give Gary and Win to them. Just OSL to them and JD. So basically, the thing is, I'm relying on my service providers, all my friends here, because they actually do the thing. Because we're insurers, we're pretty like there's a firewall, so we can only face PD and BSI PT, those the thing. Yeah, that's the thing you need to. So that's why I'm like highlighting the ecosystem is the most important thing. We cannot do this without them. Yeah, for the ETF.
I mean, it's not a crypto question.
Yeah.
Like that's an ETF question. Okay. So I'm MPF provider. Okay. So I get a lot of inflow every month. And I make funds of ETFs. Okay. And there are plenty of MPF providers like that in Hong Kong. But the flow on the screen that you see every day is minimal. Yeah. How do they buy the ETF, right? It's pretty easy. They RFQ market makers. And the market makers can make them a market, can talk to Harvest, and can talk to the PDs, and they can create new shares instantly. Because the liquidity of an ETF is the liquidity of the underlying. It's not the liquidity on the Hong Kong exchange. So it's as much Bitcoin as there is that we can buy or that OSL can buy is the amount of Bitcoin they can make new shares with for the ETF. So it's actually quite a simple process. If you're a family office that has, let's say you want to put in $5 into Bitcoin, and let's say in a few months the secondary volume of the ETF starts to drop off, so you can't just go buy it in the market at the moment. I think most of them are trading about $1 million US a day. So even today it'd be quite hard to buy $5, but you could buy $5 instantly by using RFQ. You can RFQ a market maker. They'll make you a market. They'll make the new shares for you, no problem. And that's not a Bitcoin issue. That is what happens in fixed income ETFs and equity ETFs, every ETF that's out there buying, and what your MPF providers that are making you your fund of funds are doing every single day. So it's quite a simple process, and it's quite easy to onboard into the asset class.
That's great news for all of us. And speaking of which, I do want to open a floor for
No, and use Bloomberg when you do it. That's the main point, right?
Okay, point taken. So I do want to open a floor for 2 questions. And I will just continue with our discussion, but please do brainstorm because I want to make sure that this is dynamic. And also I want to ask about HKMA. I think a lot of the key point, whether it's for this panel or the previous panel, is about stakeholders, about regulatory support. It was quite clear from this time that it's the regulators that has been pulling the card in order for this spot ETF to come to fruition in a relatively short period of time. So just going into Eleni, so in terms of HKMA, so I understand that you've been working very closely for the process with HKMA. So how will you describe their role throughout the process? and also their stance.
So is this a bit privileged?
Yes.
Okay. So in fact, just coming back to your question, Esme, yes. So for you guys, for people in public, you might be focusing on SFC as a key regulator for the ETF product, as you know, but yeah. Flora would know that at the back of it is because we are the trustee, but we are the subsidiary of a bank. So by definition, we fall into the radar of digital asset custody circular issued by Hong Kong MA in February. And for that, we have to do all sorts of pre-notification, also explaining our business plan on how we work by ourselves in providing so-called the digital asset custodian model through the appointments of OSL and HashKey as the virtual assets custodians. I would say this is one of the best examples on how a joint regulatory efforts come into play in Hong Kong. So we are seeing basically is all joint collaboration, as we can see from SFC in Hong Kong MA side, while both of the regulators have their own side of their regulatory regime and territories. Both of them, SFC works on the ETF approvals, Hong Kong MA work on our status approval, and also the digital custody regulation side from a Hong Kong MA point of view. And amazingly, as we all know, is they are so efficient that basically they could drive up a timetable, and that timetable, as we see, is 6 virtual asset ETF come into play on one day. Yeah. So I would say the regulator have demonstrated how efficient they can be and how leading they can be in driving the innovation of Hong Kong market by regulating. Yes, it's a very amazing result of that. And applause to ourselves as well. We work very hard as well.
So for the longest time, I know that you've been very big in there's needle movers in order for there to be more adoption, and let's leave education out of the equation because that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. So I can't leave completely education out of the equation because it's an obligation really. So I think Flora is facing that every day when she's trying to onboard investor. But okay, so there's a few parameters that are still seen as constrained versus other markets. So the kind of insurance aspect for custodian or sub-custodian, that's, we discussed earlier the pricing and the fact that US ETF are cheaper. There is a structural reason for that. There's also like very specific reason around the custody aspect of it. So we were lucky a few weeks ago to get a new MLO license in Hong Kong. And so that allowed us to be a bit more flexible on the insurance level that we're providing, but it's still a very expensive market to insure digital asset. And this cost is always been, we've been operating in the market for 3.5 years, has always been a deterrent for investor comparing to the global kind of custody market. So I think if we can get a bit more flexibility around this long term, obviously investors' safety is paramount here, but it would be, I think, great to drive costing lower and be more attractive for instance, these Asian investors who went into the US market, maybe when they see fees aligning and the product better align with what the economics they get in US, they may have a good reason to come back home. So that's one. The other thing that we're facing also is the capital impact of running VTP for us, VTP, but also for banks holding assets on balance sheet. This is quite costly, and the US market has faced less of that pressure in the way they've been providing liquidity to the ETF. So if we can get a little bit of flexibility around those aspects, we can also compress pricing. And the other aspect is staking. That's not something that currently is allowed in Hong Kong, but for Ethereum ETF, that's definitely something that is for someone who understands really well the economics of layer one proof of stake. it makes it less appealing to invest in a product that doesn't quite replicate all the other economics of the underlying asset. So if we can get around this also, I think we can get a lot more traction. So we've done really good work getting Ethereum across the line, but for some investor, that's not quite the product they like. So if we can get those tweaks, I think we can grow the market much further.
Right, sure. And before this, when I kicked out the panel, I did promise everyone on the floor that I'm not going to be a friction between you and also your drinks. So let's leave it on to each of our panelists to give us the nuggets of wisdom to take away for today. And then we'll wrap up this panel and leave it for everyone to get hold of each speaker as they're having drinks to ask them questions. And let's start with JD.
I'd go buy some ETF.
It has to be more than that.
No, so we really want to, I mean, a lot of people here, I think, are part of this industry. So we're really happy to also hear your feedback on this product. We work extremely hard with asset manager, PDs, master custodian trustees to really get this ecosystem built. Now we're ready to do more in that space. I think the infrastructure is getting there. So we welcome feedback on product, on what investor want to see. Is it like an ETF basket of cryptocurrencies? And I'm sure the regulator, the rest of the ecosystem will also adapt to this feedback to make sure this is not just a first step and then it just kind of stops here, but we want to see that growing.
All right, thanks. And Cindy?
Yep, I think on thing to that is this is just the beginning. Everyone's worked very, very hard to take us to where we are today, but I'm pretty sure the market would not be satisfied with just a single asset buy and hold strategy. So there's a lot to come, but you know the framework is there for more to come. But I think a lot of it ultimately depends on market demand, investor demand, so investor education.
Has the lowest fee, and we're gonna waive the management fees like from the continuous 6 month period. So Harvest has the lowest fees. That's for one. And like I said, yeah, second one Harvest have done is like the way we're the first one who does it. We're the first one, and also we have the like a best knowledge base. We know everything. And if you guys wanted to buy the ETF, any your customer, your friends want to buy it, we have referral things. You just come to me and come to everyone. Just they know Harvest, our office right there. So just you can find me and can buy our ETFs. And also yeah, just basically buy Harvest ETFs, just we're all friends here. So if you have other friends want to buy
go find Flora over drinks.
Yes.
Okay, and Eleni?
We're so proud to be one of the 14 parties in the ecosystem at the start. And honestly, we're very glad to see that basically Hong Kong is taking the leading space, particularly in the Asian market, to let retail investor with an investment exposure to a new asset class. And this asset class has been exciting to everybody. So as echoing Cindy, we are taking maybe a baby step at the start, but we are proud to be the first in line here. And we look forward to be working more with professionals. So one more note for trustee, custodians of ETFs, we transform ourselves from traditional to crypto. Yeah, so we should change our gear to be more tech-like, yeah.
And Michael, let me ask you to make a bold statement, because for those people who are dialing in through live stream, they wouldn't be able to get hold of any one of us. And as we all know, wisdom is at the bottom of the beer mug, and they wouldn't have that benefit.
I mean, like, aside from technically like the government employee working for the SUE, you had to ask for the person at the 20,000 person company to make a bold statement. That's pretty fantastic. I think I'll just give words of wisdom in that thanks to the ETF and that structure and wrapper of a product, it really allows you to use your traditional finance fintech technology, like for instance, like our trading risk systems, analytic systems, trading, everything, right, is right at your fingertips now without having to leave one system. So I think the biggest benefit of having the ETF wrapper here in Hong Kong is that you no longer have to start to onboard crypto native systems to get involved in crypto. And everything, your risk, performance, analytics can all be done in one place. And it really is the gateway into learning more, and learn by doing, don't learn by reading. So.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks very much everyone for being with us today, both from the very start from 4, and then we have one remaining session, and then off we are to drinks. So let's give a round of applause to our panelists again today, and let's make sure to answer more questions over drinks. Thank you, everyone.
So thanks again. Thank you. Thanks again to all our panelists for the enlightening discussion. As a final wrap to our event, I would like to invite Mr. Laika Tai from Evolving Capital to deliver his keynote. Is Mr. Laika Tai around? Yeah, thank you. And we understand that he will provide some general information about the crypto market. Also, drinks and some light refreshments have been prepared next door. And I know that there will be some additional guests coming over as well. So please feel free to make your way over after the completion of this event. Thank you, Mr. Tai.
下午好，很抱歉，我要用中文来发言，谢谢。我是 Evolving Capital 的创始人，同时也是这个香港证监会发出来的第一支100%投资加密资产的这个今天我们我在这个行业从业的经历是接近10年，那么我是一个这个实践者，是一个操作者，也是一个从市场派的这个角度来跟大家分享一下我们这个行业的一些机会。OK， 那么近些年来，就是英国、美国、欧盟、新加坡等一些主流的一些国家，在对这个数字货币相关的一些法案陆续的通过。那么整个形势对这个行业的发展非常的好。那么这个行业在向前推15年，它是属于一个萌芽的状态，是之前的3轮牛熊基本上都是币圈的人在玩，像整个参与者就比较草根这样一种感觉。那么从这一轮开始呢，是主流国家在进入这个市场，在推动这个行业。这一轮的牛熊跟以前完全是不一样。那么在今年的1月11日，美国证监会 SEC 批准贝莱德等11支比特币现货 ETF。其实这意味着是什么样一个情况呢？在这我们认为在世界的金融史上发生了一个非常大的一个变化，也是近些年已经没有过的，也就是一个新的金融资产，新的一个行业已经开始进入这个整个世界的金融市场的一个视野，并且现在美国政府在推动这个行业的发展。那为什么会有这样一个观点呢？因为大家非常明白，在近些年美元超发非常之严重 ，OK， 那么它的整个美债销售，最近就很多国家都在抛售美债，那么这个行业，加密资产这个行业现在已经逐渐成为美联储的一个政策工具 ，OK， 那它怎么做到这一点呢？首先我们理解就是数字资产这个领域，它主要的分为那么几块，第一个是交易所，因为交易所是有定价权的，对不对？所以在1年前，这个 CJ 就是赵长鹏被引到美国之后，在我们的整个理论界就有这种说法，在美国已经开始出手在把控这样一个行业，这样一个市场。所以后面出现的情况就是，世界排名第1的币安的交易所的交易量，从最高的这个交易份额最高的市场份额到85，一直下降，现在已经下降到50甚至更低的一个没有现在下降已经很多的一个份额。那么 Coinbase 的整个市场占有率是在纳斯达克上市的，所以这是一升一降就出现了非常大的变化。这是在这个行业一个非常重要的，就是一是交易所，第二个就是整个交易的过程中，用的都是什么？有个叫平衡币叫 USDT、USDC，OK， 是不是？那么 USDC 的这个发行方泰达公司在过去的1、2年时间，他购买了大量的美国中长期的国债，甚至它的占有份额在1年前就超过了澳大利亚。作为一个公司，而不是主权国家，它所占的份额、所占的比重已经很高，也就是USDT 发行的越多，那么美债销售的越多。OK， 那么就它在这一方面就通过 USDT 从这个行业把这个美元在全球化再推广出去，这是非常重要的一点。所以美国一直在推动这样的一个事情。那么这个行业里面还有最大的玩家是谁呢？原来都是刚才说都是以散户为主、币圈人为主。OK， 那么11号的时候，美国证监会批准了11只的 ETF， 就意味着这些大玩家，华尔街的大玩家开始进场了。散户是永远玩不过大玩家的，玩不过机构的，所以这个行业逐步已经在美国在把控。所以呢，当华尔街在推动这个行业发展的时候，未来是不是整个发展的机会，它的整个币价会不会涨得很高？这是给到我们的一个信号。OK， 那么紧接着在4月30号，我们香港政府就推出了这个比特币现货，比特币现货的 ETF 就上市，同时也是推出了全球第1个以太坊的 ETF， 这是全球首例。所以这香港政府整个推动的速度也非常非常快，这就是我们在快速跟进，甚至在超越的一个过程。可以想象哈，用不了多长时间，香港就会成为全球的虚拟资产交易中心之一 ，OK， 并且会成为亚洲最重要的一个虚拟资产的交易中心，这就是给到我们非常好的一个投资机会。那么，现货 ETF 的上市，为数字资产注入更多的流动性，也为传统资本进入这个数字资产领域打开了快速的通道。现在在我们香港就可以像买股票一样买比特币 ETF，OK 吧？可以用买股票一样买那个以太坊，所以就给我们这整个门槛就降低，进入的速度就很快。对，这就是现在发生的一个在这个行业推动的一个好现象。那么现在 ETF 推出是最好的时机，可见不管是 SEC 还是 SFC 对这个市场都非常非常之了解。为什么会这么说呢？因为在数字资产行业它是有规律的，它是4年一个牛熊，现阶段是最好的一个时机，也就是出牛的开始，后面还有一个很快的一个很长的一个成长周期。 那么比特币从原来的币圈的产物，到现在是华尔街的投资产品，也是许多金融机构配置的重要标的。这个过程用了15年时间，在这15年的时间里形成了一定的规律，而我们在币圈的人性非常之明确，规律性非常之明确，懂得规律的机构在这里可以获得非常大的收益。这在 A 股在其他的一些市场里面，所受到的这个投资回报是很不一样的。好，就这一观点，我们来做以下的分析。第一，它是流动性非常强。之所以说流动性非常强，不管是在亚洲、在欧洲还是在非洲，只要有个因特网，你就可以上线，就可以买卖，就可以交易，所以它的流动性非常之强。如果说我们购买的是这个香港的不动产，是房屋，你要做变现的过程中，这个过程是很艰难的，对不对？所以它的流动性是全球性的，它这个市场是全球性的。OK， 当有利好的时候，全世界的资本都会推动这个行业发展，所以它充满了魅力。那么看第二个，周期性非常之明确，4年一个周期。在投资产品里面，这么有规律的投资性产品是极少极少的。之前已经走过4个周期，现在是之前走过3个，现在属于第4个周期。还有一个很让人兴奋的、非常刺激的是，每一个周期从低点到高点有10几倍，这是一个比较保守的说法。OK， 在上面的2轮牛熊，它的最低点到最高点是有18倍左右，18到19倍，这是之前的几个行情带来的一些规律。好，我们就这些我们再做一些分析。2022年的11月，比特币创的新高是1个比特币是69000美金。那么这一轮的低点呢？这是22年。那么它的低点下跌的过程中，低点呢是到了15000美金哈。在不同的交易所，它的这价格会稍微有一点差别。那么今年的3月11日，比特币已经突破新高，创了新高，达到了73000美金一枚。现在属于什么样的阶段呢？就是破新高之后，在震荡的一个过程，在蓄积力量震荡的一个过程，属于这样的一个阶段。OK， 那么在整个牛市任何一个周期里面，牛市的一个重要标志就是比特币的减半。那么在今年的4月20日，比特币从一个区块6.25个比特币，降到了一个区块是3.125枚比特币。那怎么理解这个词呢？就是你可以这么理解，就是比特币的挖矿成本上升了100%。OK， 它的供应量是降低了100%。OK， 这差别是非常大的，这就是比特币牛市的一个标志性事件。如果按以前的惯例，就是在比特币的减半之后，在未来的50天到100天之间，它是属于一个震荡期。震荡完了之后呢，后面再加上其他的一些事件，大的牛市就可以开始了。比如说下一个牛市开启还有一些标志性的事情是什么呢？比如说就是美元降息、美国大选等等其他的一些因素，包括一些政府的政策等等，这是一些大的规律。所以在未来的现在是24年的5月份，未来的1年多时间，那基本上就是整个牛市爆发性成长的一个过程。 这是以前的一些规律。OK， 那么未来的整个牛市发展就会非常非常快。我想今天在座的各位呢，到这里就是一是了解整个行业发展，同时也想了解就是作为我们香港的这个普通民众如何进入这个行业啊？那么我们如何拥抱这个牛市？以用什么的方式进场呢？今天好多嘉宾都在讨论关于比特币的 ETF、以太坊的 ETF。那么这是一个很好的进入的通道。那么但是 ETF 进场呢，它也有一些它的不足之处，比如说你买 ETF 有点像买港股一样，对不对？现在首先确定一个确定点，就是现在进场的时机非常好，非常 OK， 这是没问题的。但是什么时候出场您知道吗？您知道什么时候出场吗？不知道。有句话这么说的，买是徒弟，卖是什么？卖是师傅。你做过师傅了吗？你身边有师傅吗 ？OK， 就是卖的时候在什么时候卖出去不知道 ，OK 吧？还有一点就刚才说到了，它这一次的涨跌幅会非常之大，比港股比很多金融产品涨跌幅都非常大。其实在一个牛市里面是很多人在亏钱的，对好不对？是这样子，所以你在什么时候卖出？现在买了，可能涨了个50%，你觉得很 OK 的，不错了，你卖出了，对不对？也对，你赚了50%，时间可能很短，但是再高的时候，你可能又追进去了，对吗？高位震荡的时候，下来的时候，你又出来了，对不对？所以非专业人士在这里赚到钱还是有些难的 ，OK 吧？那么在这里呢，在金融市场一定是专业的机构才能拿到最好的结果，对不对？所以呢，就像现在在这个市场里面，我们刚才有说到，就是在香港 SFC 批准通过的这个投资二级基金的这个私募基金，其实香港现在非常非常少。那么我们是第一支 ，OK。那么我们的团队呢是在这个行业核心的人员都是经历将近10年的磨练的，这么一个特殊的市场，我们做过10年的磨练，而且在这里取得非常大的成就的，一些人士。OK， 那么我们的基金它的特点是什么呢？比如说，投资的门槛会比 ETF 会高一些，但是我们做的是基本上是2年时间的一个周期。现在进场就是在整个牛市到高位的时候才会出来。当然，在这过程中，我们会赚贝塔的钱，也会赚阿尔法的钱。那么这里面就是需要很专业的操作手段、操作手法来做这个事情。对，所以在这里呢，有很多专业的一些技术，我们在这里就不太分享啊。因为就不细节方面我们就不太说，因为属于技术层面的事情。那么呢，就是在未来一段时间，如果在操作方面有一些需要的，需要咨询的，关于私募基金这一块，有需要咨询的可以加我的微信，我们后面可以做一些交流。OK， 非常感谢大家，好。
Thank you all.